They told me the truth was settled. Printed. Signed. Sealed inside a hospital file I would never see again. The DNA test said my son was mine. My wife cried with relief. Her mother smiled like a woman who just buried a secret forever. But 6 months later, a single sentence from a hospital clerk cracked everything open. My name is Nathan Anderson. I'm 38. I built my life on discipline, loyalty, and silence. I believed that if you loved hard enough and worked clean enough, betrayal would eventually get tired and walk away. I was wrong. Kate, my wife, had a past she never truly let die. An ex she swore meant nothing. A suspicion I swallowed every time it rose in my throat, because confronting her meant risking the family I was trying to protect. So I chose proof over accusations. A DNA test. Quiet. Clinical. Final. What I didn't know was that before the results reached me, Kate and her mother walked into that hospital with stolen money, practiced smiles, and a doctor willing to sell the truth by the page. They thought the lie would rot quietly underground. They underestimated what a man becomes when he realizes his entire life was forged on paper. And they forgot one thing. Buried things don't stay buried when the wrong person starts digging. Before we continue this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Kindly click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. From the outside, our marriage looked calm, too calm. The kind of calm people mistake for stability. Kate laughed at my jokes, kissed me goodbye every morning, and spoke about our future like it was already guaranteed. A house. College funds. Retirement plans. She loved certainty, especially when it came from my paycheck. What she didn't love was discomfort. Anytime the past drifted too close, she redirected the conversation with practiced ease. Her ex was ancient history. The late-night phone calls were work stress. The sudden secrecy around her phone was privacy. And every time my instincts whispered that something wasn't right, I answered them with silence. I told myself trust was patience. I told myself real men didn't interrogate their wives. Avoidance became our shared language. I worked longer hours. She smiled harder. Her mother visited more often, watching me with eyes that measured, not welcomed. Sometimes I'd catch Kate studying me, as if checking whether I was still blind enough to be useful. When I asked if something was wrong, she'd touch my face and say, "You worry too much, Nathan." And I believed her. Because believing her meant I didn't have to risk losing the life I'd built. Our son was the center of everything. I loved him fiercely, irrationally. He was the reason I swallowed questions whole. The reason I ignored how Kate stiffened whenever I mentioned family resemblance. The reason I laughed off comments that landed too sharp to be jokes. Peace, I learned, can be manufactured. You just have to decide which truths you're willing to starve. So I kept quiet. I stayed loyal. I avoided the one question that could shatter everything. And in doing so, I unknowingly gave them time to prepare, time to plot, time to decide what kind of man they thought I was. They thought I was the kind who would never look twice. They were wrong. The decision didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, disguised as logic. A way to end the noise in my head without lighting a fire in my home. I told myself it wasn't about suspicion, it was about certainty. About protecting a child who deserved clarity, even if the adults didn't. I made the appointment alone. No accusations. No warnings. Just paperwork and neutral faces that didn't know my name or my marriage. I remember how calm my voice sounded when I scheduled it, how detached I felt, like I was arranging a routine checkup instead of questioning my own blood. Kate never knew the exact moment my trust fractured. She only sensed a shift. I became quieter, more observant. I started noticing what I'd trained myself to ignore, the way she hovered near my phone, the way she left the room to take calls, the way her mother suddenly asked too many questions about my schedule. The test was supposed to be private. Final. A line drawn without confrontation. I planned to carry the result alone, whatever it said. If the truth confirmed what I believed, I would bury my doubts and move forward. If it didn't. I didn't let myself finish that thought. The day of the test, I watched my son play with a plastic truck in the waiting room, unaware of the weight sitting in my chest. I told myself this was the responsible choice. The quiet choice. The kind of choice that prevented damage. What I didn't know was that silence doesn't just hide the truth. It gives it space to be altered. And somewhere between that waiting room and my front door, my decision stopped being mine alone. The call came on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that usually passes without memory. A calm voice. A rehearsed cadence. The results were in. Everything matched. No complications. No need for follow-up. Relief was supposed to rush in. Instead, something inside me stalled. Kate cried when I told her. Not messy, uncontrolled tears, measured ones. The kind that arrives right on cue. She wrapped her arms around me, whispered that she'd always known that my doubts had hurt her more than she admitted. Her mother nodded from the doorway, her expression serene, almost triumphant. A crisis has been resolved. A family preserved. And yet, the air felt staged. The paperwork was pristine. No margin for error. No uncertainty. I'd expected the truth, whatever it was, to carry weight. Instead, it slid into my hands smooth and frictionless, like something designed not to be questioned. The doctor didn't ask how I felt. Didn't explain methodology. Just closed the file and moved on. Life resumed immediately. Too soon. Kate's vigilance relaxed overnight. Her phone lay face up again. The tension drained from her shoulders. She spoke about vacations and renovations with renewed confidence, as if a lock had clicked into place. Her mother stopped watching me so closely. I told myself I was overthinking. That doubt was a habit I needed to break. I repeated the word, confirmed, until it dulled whatever unease remained. But certainty shouldn't feel rehearsed. Truth doesn't usually arrive wrapped so neatly. I folded the report and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened, telling myself that was the end of it. That I could finally breathe. What I didn't realize was how quickly lies settle when everyone involved is ready to move on. Everyone, except me. Time did what it always does, it covered everything in routine. Mornings blurred into evenings. Arguments softened into habits. The report in the drawer gathered dust, untouched and unquestioned. On the surface, the unease faded. Underneath, it waited. The loose thread revealed itself by accident. I was on the phone with our insurance provider, trying to sort out a billing issue from the hospital. A minor discrepancy, they said. A code entered twice. Before hanging up, the woman paused and mentioned another inquiry tied to my file, one I didn't recognize. A request made weeks before my appointment. Authorized. Documented. By who? She transferred me to records. The clerk spoke carefully, as if choosing words that wouldn't echo. She mentioned a pre-visit consultation. A change request. Then she stopped, suddenly aware she might be saying too much. I thanked her and ended the call with my heart thudding hard enough to feel in my throat. That night, I watched Kate closely. She laughed easily, but her eyes flicked to me too often. When I asked an unrelated question about the hospital, her answer came a beat too fast. Her mother called later, her voice tight, asking if everything was all right. That was when the drawer came open. I reread the report with new eyes, noticing what I'd missed before, dates that didn't align, signatures that looked hurried, details that raised more questions than they answered. The document hadn't changed. I had. All it took was one careless note in a system built on silence. One loose thread. And suddenly, everything I thought was settled began to unravel. I stopped asking questions out loud. Silence had taught me how to listen, and now it was time to use it properly. I requested a copy of my records under the pretense of updating insurance. I spoke calmly. I thanked people. I waited. The files told a different story when read slowly. A visit logged under Kate's name days before my appointment. An amended authorization. A doctor's signature that appeared twice, once clean, once corrected. It wasn't proof yet, but it was direction. I went back to the hospital alone. The doctor avoided my eyes before I'd even spoken. His office smelled like disinfectant and fear. I asked simple questions, the kind that leave no room to hide behind terminology. He hesitated. Then he tried to explain it away as a clerical oversight. When that failed, he offered to review the case again. That was when I mentioned the money. Not the amount. Not the source. Just the fact that I knew it existed. His shoulders collapsed. He admitted that Kate hadn't come alone. Her mother had done most of the talking, quiet, firm, prepared. They paid in cash. Money Kate had been skimming from our household for months. The request was simple: adjust the result enough to pass scrutiny. Make the problem disappear. And he agreed. I walked out without raising my voice. Without threatening him. The truth had already done the damage. At home, I looked at my wife differently. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every touch felt borrowed. The betrayal wasn't just the affair, or the lie about my son. It was the coordination. The confidence. The belief that I would never notice. They hadn't just protected a secret. They had rewritten my life and trusted a stranger to seal it shut. That was the moment I stopped being a husband. And became something far more dangerous. I didn't announce what I was doing. Exposure works best when it arrives without warning. The second test came back clean, unaltered, undeniable. Delivered through attorneys who spoke in timelines and liabilities, not emotions. The hospital tried to contain it, internal reviews, closed-door meetings, but truth spreads faster when paperwork starts contradicting itself. Audits followed. Cash trails surfaced. The doctor broke first, then the system that protected him. Public statements were issued, carefully worded and hollow. Careers ended quietly. Reputations didn't. Kate found out last. I didn't confront her with anger. I gave her documents. Dates. Signatures. Transfers. She read them slowly, like a language she once spoke fluently and had suddenly forgotten. Her mother wasn't there to guide her this time. When she arrived later, furious and defensive, the room had already shifted. Lawyers have a way of draining confidence from people who've lived on manipulation. They pleaded separately. Kate came first. She cried the way people do when they realize control is gone, no strategy, no polish, just desperation. She said she was scared. Said she thought she was protecting our family. Said it meant nothing now, that we could rebuild if I let it go. She reached for my hand and froze when I didn't take it. Her mother tried later, with logic instead of tears. She spoke about outcomes, about appearances, about how damage multiplies when families break. She asked me to be reasonable. To think long-term. Neither understood that I already had. The truth is, the marriage didn't end in that room. It had ended the moment they decided I wasn't entitled to my own reality. What they wanted back wasn't love, it was stability, access, the life my silence had made possible. I said no once. Calmly. Completely. The aftermath unfolded without spectacle. Divorce proceedings moved efficiently. Assets were divided with precision. Social consequences arrived in waves, quiet distancing, unanswered calls, invitations that stopped coming. People don't need every detail to recognize betrayal when it's documented. Through all of it, the child remained untouched by blame. Legally and emotionally, he was protected. Custody was structured around continuity, not punishment. His routine stayed intact. School, friends, laughter, none of it was sacrificed to adult failure. I made sure of that. He was never told the full story, only that families change shape sometimes, and that he was loved without condition. I showed up. Consistently. Quietly. In ways that mattered. That was my victory. Kate struggled in ways she didn't expect. Without the story she'd rehearsed for years, she didn't know who to be. Apologies followed me for months, messages sent and unsent, promises rewritten with urgency. She asked for another chance once more, voice steadier than before, hope thinner. I listened. Then I closed the door gently, without malice. A new life doesn't announce itself either. It grows. Mine did in the absence of tension. In mornings that didn't require vigilance. In evenings that didn't demand silence. I moved. I rebuilt it. I learned the difference between peace and avoidance, between forgiveness and surrender. I didn't harden. I clarified. I stopped confusing restraint with weakness. The past didn't disappear, but it lost its authority. The lie that once dictated everything had nowhere left to stand. What remained was responsibility, chosen, not imposed, and a future built without borrowed certainty. I didn't come out unscarred. I came out awake. And for the first time, the life ahead of me didn't depend on anyone else keeping a secret. Thank you for being here and supporting the journey. Your time means everything. Please subscribe to see more content like this.